In my family, love was the ledger, and I was the only one paying the bills. My name is Olivia Smith. For 3 years, I secretly funneled my entire future, nearly $300,000, into my family's all-American hardware store, all while telling myself I was the good daughter. I was really just their ATM. I just never expected that the price of their approval would be my entire life. What happens when the person paying all the bills finally decides to check the receipts? I'm about to show you just how high the cost of loyalty can be. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We always appreciate the time you spent here with us. On my dual monitors, a digital wireframe of the new Columbia River crossing shutters. I'm running a seismic stress test, and the simulation glows a deep, angry red along the primary suspension cable. Load-bearing capacity at 97.4%. In my world, 97.4% is a catastrophic failure. In my world, every variable matters. Every calculation, every decimal point in the tensile strength of steel, every ounce of pressure. It all has to add up. If it doesn't, the simulation fails. And in the real world, bridges collapse. People get hurt. I live by that certainty. My family, they never understood that. To them, the numbers were just suggestions. A 97.4%. They'd laugh, round it up, and call it an A+. I close the simulation and open a different window, the one that's not for work, my personal bank account. It's the first of the month. My thumb hovers over the transfer button. Recipient Smith's hardware and feed. Amount $7,500. I've done this every month for 3 years, a ritual as ingrained and joyless as brushing my teeth. I click confirm. The routing number is memorized, burned into my brain like a prayer. The balance in my future home savings account, a name that's become a bitter joke, dips to a number that makes my stomach clench. $1,432.18. 3 years of work, 3 years of six-figure paychecks, and that's what I have to show for it. It's a secret, a corrosive one. To the rest of the world, especially my boyfriend Ben, I'm just Olivia Smith, the overachieving civil engineer at a top Portland firm. The daughter who got out, the one who made it. They don't know I am the only thing keeping my successful family from total, unmitigated collapse. Eagle Creek, Oregon isn't just a town, it's a postcard of American resilience. It's a place where people believe in hard work, community, and the Smith family. And the heart of that community, its sturdy, reliable beating heart, is Smith's hardware and feed. At least that's the story we tell. My grandfather built it from nothing, and it's where I grew up. It's not just a store, it's an institution. It smells like sawdust, fertilizer, and my father's burnt coffee. It's where I learned to count by sorting lag bolts, and where the high school football team still gets supplies on the cheap to build the homecoming float. It's where farmers get their feet on credit when the rain doesn't come, a promise settled with a handshake. My father, Mark Smith, still holds court every morning at the back counter, coffee mug in hand, dispensing wisdom and judgment in equal measure. You can't build a life on shaky ground, he loves to say, oblivious to the irony. He's the patriarch, the symbol of small-town integrity. And my younger brother, Leo is the charming face of the business. He's the one who's taking it into the 21st century, as my mother Diane likes to say. So far, that has meant a new buggy website and a lot of business lunches on the company card. My life in Portland is a carefully constructed lie built on this one massive truth. I live in a modest apartment in Beaverton, not the sleek downtown condo Ben keeps pointing out in magazines. I drive a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a grinding transmission and a passenger side dent I haven't bothered to fix. And the down payment for the house, Ben and I keep dreaming about the little 1920s Craftsman in the Roseway neighborhood, the one with the big yard and the original hardwood floors. It's non-existent. Look, Liv, he'd said last weekend, his arm around me as we stood on the sidewalk. It even has a detached garage, perfect for your workshop. The words were a knife. He sees a future. I see a ledger that never balances. My down payment fund has been covering payroll, emergency inventory, and my brother's marketing ideas at Smith's Hardware for 36 straight months. I'm 29 years old and I am exhausted. I'm drowning, weighted down by an anchor 3 hours east, an anchor I tied to my own ankle. I tell myself it's just paying them back for my engineering degree. I tell myself I'm investing in the community that raised me. But as I stare at my depleted bank account, the justification sounds weaker every month. My phone buzzes on the desk. A text from my mother. My heart sinks before I even read it. Hi, sweetie. Just thinking about you. Thanksgiving is at our place, of course. We're planning a big one. The whole family can't wait. Oh, and Leo is so excited he's about to lock in a huge deal on a new line of steel chainsaws. A real game changer for the holidays. Any chance you could send next month's help a little early, just to secure the order? My blood goes cold. Next month's help. Not a loan, not an investment. Help, like I'm a charity, like it's an obligation. I look back at my monitor. The bridge simulation, the one I thought I'd closed, is still open, and it's flashing a pulsing black-on-white warning that makes me physically nauseous. System error, cascade, failure initiated, structural integrity, 0%. A cold dread sharper than any guilt I've ever known washes over me. The numbers aren't just off. They're not adding up at all. That night, the catalyst for the entire collapse wasn't my family. It was Ben. He walked into my apartment vibrating with an energy I hadn't seen in months and tossed a bottle of champagne onto the counter. "You're looking at the new senior analyst for the Pacific Northwest," he announced, pulling me into a hug that lifted me off my feet. I laughed, the first genuine, uncomplicated feeling I'd had all day. "Ben, that's amazing, But he was already pulling his laptop from his bag, his smile electric. "That's not even the best part," he said, tapping the trackpad. "Remember that craftsman in Roseway, the one with the workshop?" He spun the screen around. It was a real estate listing. "Sale pending" was stamped across the main photo. My heart stopped. "Ben, what is this?" "This," he said, his voice thick with pride, "is our pending. My bonus was significant live. More than enough to cover our side of the down payment. I talked to the agent. They accepted our offer an hour ago. We can finally do this, Liv. We're getting a house." Joy. That's what I should have felt. But what washed over me was a wave of shame so cold and heavy it nearly buckled my knees. My side of the down payment. All $270,000 I'd poured into the black hole of Smith's Hardware flashed before my eyes. He thought we were partners. I was a fraud. "Liv, you're white as a ghost. This is good news." I pulled away, busying myself with the champagne, my hands shaking. "Ben, it's fast. I'm not sure I have my finances in order for this right now." He froze, his smile faltering. "In order? What does that mean? We've been saving for 2 years." "I know, I had some things come up. My student loans, my car." The lies tasted like ash. The fight that followed was the worst kind, quiet, deep, and wounding. "I'm not asking for your money, Liv," he said, his voice dangerously low. "I'm asking for you. We're supposed to be a team, but you're somewhere else. You've been somewhere else for a long time." He slept on the couch. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing my secret was no longer just a financial drain. It was actively poisoning the only good, stable thing in my life. I didn't call. The next morning, I told Ben I had to go. "Family stuff," I mumbled, and the look of resigned disappointment on his face was worse than any anger. Shaken, I drove the 3 hours to Eagle Creek, my Honda groaning on the mountain pass. I was operating on a toxic cocktail of shame, guilt, and a new unfamiliar thread of suspicion. My mother's text, Ben's hurt, the empty savings account. I was going to get into the Thanksgiving spirit, as I'd tell my parents, but I knew I was really there for an audit. I parked a block away and walked up the familiar street. It was 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday. The sidewalk should have been bustling, But as I got closer, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The community hub was a ghost town. Half the overhead fluorescent lights were burnt out. The Fall Savings Banco banner in the window was sun-bleached and torn. I pushed open the heavy glass door and the bell above it didn't jingle. It just gave a dull metallic thunk. The store was empty. No customers, no Mark Smith holding court at the back. Just aisles of dusty, disorganized inventory. It smelled like stale coffee and failure. Well, look what the cat dragged in. I jumped, spinning around. My brother Leo emerged from the back office, not in his work polo, but in a faded band t-shirt, phone in hand. Hey, Leo, where's Dad? Tuesday. Leo shrugged as if that explained everything. Old man's golf day. He was followed by a young woman, maybe 20, with tired eyes and a name tag that just said Sarah. She was nervously clutching a feather duster. Leo didn't introduce her. He just leaned against a shelf of power tools, feet crossed, and grinned at me. So, what's up? Come to see the Empire. His eyes flicked to Sarah and he puffed his chest, playing the part of the boss. Liv? My favorite investor. Seriously good timing. I was just telling Sarah how we're about to corner the market on, well, everything. Sarah just looked at the floor, her face burning. An investor? I asked, my voice flat. Is that what I am? The best kind? He laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. The silent kind. Unnerved by the lack of customers, by the sheer emptiness of the place, the engineer in me took over. Leo, I need to see the books. His smile didn't just fade, it vanished. The books, what are you, the IRS? Why? For my taxes. I said the lie, coming easier this time. My accountant needs to know where the money is going, to categorize the investment. He got defensive, immediately crossing his arms. Whoa, okay, Miss Fortune 500. I don't handle that paperwork. Mom does. It's all legit. I found my mother Diane in the cramped back office, the same one Leo had just emerged from. She wasn't doing paperwork. She was on the phone. Her voice hushed, and when she saw me, she snapped the ancient receiver back into its cradle like it had burned her. Olivia, sweetheart. What a surprise. Are you here for Thanksgiving already? She looked stressed, her hair frazzled, and she was trying to hide a stack of brightly colored, menacing-looking envelopes under a seed catalog. Final notice. Mom, where is everyone? The store is dead. Oh, she said, fluttering her hands. Just a little slump, a seasonal thing. Don't you worry your pretty head. Your brother has a huge marketing idea for Christmas. It's going to be wonderful. Now have you eaten? You're too thin. I left my head spinning with deflections and non-answers. The air in the store felt thick and toxic. I was confused, angry, and worse, I was feeling guilty. Maybe they were just in a slump. Maybe I was the bad guy for questioning them. I was halfway to my car, fumbling for my keys, when I heard a quiet, "Ma'am, Miss Smith." I turned. It was Sarah, the new hire, clutching her jacket around herself in the parking lot. She looked terrified, like she'd just run a marathon. You're Olivia, right, Leo's sister? Yes, I said, wary. What is it? She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a desperate whisper. I probably shouldn't be saying this. I'll lose my job, but you need to watch yourself. They're not good people. What are you talking about? I asked. Her eyes darted back toward the store. The money, she whispered, her voice shaking. The money you send. I heard Leo bragging on the phone. It's not going to steel chainsaws, it's not going to new ovens, and it's sure as hell not going to payroll. I haven't been paid in 2 weeks. Sarah's words echoed in the rattling cabin of my Honda all the way back to Portland. It's not going to new ovens. A simple sentence. A simple, devastating sentence that unlocked a part of my brain I usually reserved for stress fractures in steel. The good daughter part of me, the part that felt guilty and ashamed in the parking lot, went silent. The engineer took over. My family wasn't an emotional problem anymore. They were a contamination protocol. They were a catastrophic failure I was determined to understand. I got back to my apartment, walked past Ben, who was still on the couch pretending to be asleep, and went straight to my workstation. I wasn't just the good daughter anymore. I was the scientist. And it was time to run the data. I started with what I knew: my own bank. For 3 hours, I exported 36 months of my life, transaction after transaction. $7, $500, $7,500, an extra $10,000 in April for property taxes, a $5,000 emergency in August for refrigeration failure, a $12,000 wire in December for Christmas inventory. Total sum $270,000. No, I was wrong. The number staring at me in a neat little sum box in Excel was $294,500. I couldn't access the diner's bank accounts. That was a brick wall. But I didn't need to see what was coming in. I needed to see where my money was going out. I started cross-referencing my transfers with public records. I could see my money land in the Smith's hardware and feed business account. And then, it vanished. But not all of it. There were patterns. Large, regular automated payments. Not to power tool suppliers, not to seed companies, not to steel. Every month, 2 days after my $7,500 landed, a payment of exactly $5,000 was transferred out to a company I'd never heard of, Provision Logistics, LLC. A quick search on the Oregon Secretary of State website showed it was a real company registered just 2 years ago. The registered agent, a name I didn't recognize. The address, a P.O. box at a strip mall in Gresham. This wasn't a hardware supplier. This was a shell. I hit a wall. I was an engineer, not a forensic accountant. I knew how to trace a load path, but not a money laundering scheme. I looked at the clock, 3:17 a.m. I looked at Ben still on the couch, his back to me. The shame was suffocating. I couldn't protect my future and my pride at the same time. The lies had to stop. This was the moment. My personal freedom, my entire future depended on it. I walked into the living room and knelt by the couch. "Ben," I whispered. He stirred, blinking. "Liv, what's wrong?" "Ben, I'm in trouble." I said the words tasting like poison. "But it's not the kind you think. I need your help. Not as my boyfriend. I need the financial analyst." I told him everything. I didn't cry. I just stated the facts like I was presenting a failing simulation. The $294,500, the monthly payments, the lies about my savings, the empty store, the girl named Sarah, the shell company. I expected him to be angry. I expected him to say, "I told you so." He didn't. He just sat up, his face grim, and stared at the wall for a full minute. Then he stood, walked to the kitchen, and started the coffee pot. "Okay," he said, his voice all business. "Give me the LLC name. Provision Logistics." He sat at my workstation and I watched him work. It was like watching a surgeon. His fingers flew. He wasn't just guessing. He was using analytic tools I didn't even know existed, pulling on threads, cross-referencing IP addresses, finding back-end code. It took him 2 hours. "Got it," he said, his voice flat. "Provision Logistics is a shell, all right. It's registered to a P.O. box, but the domain registration, the one they use to set up their bank account, it's linked to an IP address that pings from an offshore server. It's a pass-through. It's designed to funnel money." "Funnel where?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Ben spun the monitor toward me. It was a high-stakes online gambling site, Royal Flush Casino. "He's not investing in the diner, Liv. He's gambling." I nearly choked. You mean my dad?" Ben's face was pale. "I don't know yet. But Olivia, there's something worse. While I was in the state databases, I ran a UCC lien search against the hardware store's EIN." "A what?" "A lien. A debt. Your family's diner. It has a new loan against it. A big one." He clicked, and my blood turned to ice. A $50,000 loan taken out 3 weeks ago. Not from a bank. From a private predatory lender based in Portland. The interest rate was a criminal 38%. My God, I whispered, sinking into the chair. My dad. He must be so desperate. Ben wasn't listening. He was typing, his jaw tight. Liv, who is Mark Smith? That's my father, I said, confused. Why? Ben pointed to the screen at the metadata block on the digital loan application he'd somehow found. The loan wasn't co-signed by your dad, it was the other way around. Your father is listed as the co-signer. The primary applicant was Leo Smith. And the money, he said, his voice dropping, it wasn't deposited into the Smith's hardware business account. The routing number. It's a personal checking account. Leo's personal account. He turned to look at me, his eyes full of a terrible cold clarity. He's not just running the business into the ground, Liv. He's actively stealing from you and your parents. I didn't sleep. How could I? The woman who stared back at me from the bathroom mirror at 6 a.m. was a stranger, a hollow-eyed, sallow-skinned ghost. The person who went to bed last night believed her family was struggling. This person, the one breathing in the harsh fluorescent light, knew her family was a lie. It wasn't a slump. It wasn't a bad run of luck. It was fraud. Active, intentional, and prolonged. Leo, my baby brother, the one I taught to ride a bike and helped with his calculus homework, was a thief. He hadn't just taken my money. He'd stolen my future, my dreams of a home, my relationship with Ben. He'd stolen $294,500. And my parents. Oh God, my parents. They weren't just enablers. They were co-conspirators. My mother, with her fluttering hands and stressed-out smiles, knew. She'd been lying for him, running interference, managing me, while Leo gambled away my life. The resilience I'd been funding, the community hub I thought I was saving. It was an illusion, a set, a cheap backdrop for my brother's addiction paid for by me. The whole thing was rotten right down to the studs. It was Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving. The day I was supposed to be driving to Eagle Creek, my trunk loaded with expensive Pinot Noir from the valley and 3 different kinds of pies from a bakery Ben loved. I was supposed to be the good daughter, bringing treats and cash. I sat on the edge of my bed, the facts of my new reality settling over me like a shroud. Ben found me there, holding my car keys, my face a mask of indecision. "You're not actually going?" he said. It wasn't a question. "I have to," I whispered. "Liv, no, you don't. You're the victim of a crime, a massive one. We call the police. We call a lawyer. We freeze your accounts and report the fraud. That's what a normal person does." He was right, of course. A normal person would call the police. A normal person would see the spreadsheets and the loan documents and the shell corporation and call it what it was, a criminal enterprise. But this was my family. This was the man who taught me to fish and the woman who bandaged my knees. You don't call the police on your own blood. Not yet. Not until you've seen their faces. I have to, Ben, I said, my voice firmer now. I have to look them in the eye. I have to give them one last chance, one chance to tell me the truth. He looked at me, his eyes full of a painful pity. And what if they don't? Then I know. I had no idea that this one single decision to get in my car to drive east into the gorge to walk into that house would be the last time I ever saw them as my family. I had no idea that in 24 hours the word family would mean nothing at all. I left the pies and the wine in my kitchen. The drive was a blur of gray skies and bare trees. I was on autopilot, a missile locked on target. When I pulled onto my childhood street, the house looked offensively normal. The same sagging gutter, the same overgrown rose bushes, my father's truck in the driveway. I walked up the cracked concrete path and used my key. The ambush wasn't violent, it was worse. It was love. I opened the door, and the smell of roasting turkey and sage stuffing hit me like a physical blow. It smelled like my childhood. It smelled like safety. "She's here," my mother trilled from the kitchen. She bustled out, wiping her hands on an apron, her face a mask of perfect maternal joy. "Olivia, oh sweetheart, we were so worried you'd get caught in the holiday traffic." Let me look at you. She fussed over my hair, pulled at my jacket. You're too thin. Are you eating? My father appeared in the doorway, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his face beaming. There's my successful girl, my engineer. Come to grace us with your presence. He clapped me on the shoulder, a heavy proprietary gesture. Your timing is perfect. I was just about to pour myself another. Then came Leo. He bounded down the stairs, his face bright and guileless, and pulled me into a hug so tight it stole my breath. Liv, you're the best sis. Seriously. Thanks for, helping out. It's gonna be a huge Thanksgiving. It was so normal. So disgustingly, terrifyingly normal. The warmth, the smells, the smiles. It was all a lie. They were actors, every one of them playing their parts in a cozy family drama, while I bankrolled the production. It made me sick. I didn't take off my coat. I just stood in the entryway, the cold air from outside still clinging to me. They finally noticed, their smiles faltering. Liv, sweetheart. What's wrong? My mother asked, her hand fluttering to her throat. Take your coat off, you'll catch a cold. I'm not here for Thanksgiving, I said. My voice was a dead flat thing. It didn't even sound like mine. The three of them froze, a perfect tableau. Mom with her hand on her chest. Dad with his glass halfway to his lips. Leo, his arms still draped over the newel post. I'm here about the loan, I said, my voice shaking just enough to prove I was human. The $50,000 loan, Leo. The one you took out in Dad's name 3 weeks ago. The smiles vanished. My mother's face went white. My father put his glass down, his hand unsteady. He stood up, puffing his chest, the patriarch ready for a fight. But it was Leo who spoke. He didn't look scared. He didn't look guilty. He just looked annoyed. He ran a hand through his hair and gave a short, dismissive laugh. Oh, that, he said, his voice smooth and cold. Yeah, I was gonna tell you. It's totally fine. It's just a little bridge loan. I've got a new system. It's a sure thing. I'll pay it back by Christmas. I watched my father. I watched his face as Leo spoke. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shocked. He was relieved. My father, Mark Smith, the pillar of the community, looked relieved that his son's only crime was a sure thing. He turned to me, his face hardening into familiar disdain. See, Olivia, a sure thing. You don't understand business. You just work in a lab. Now stop this nonsense. You're upsetting your mother. Go help her with the cranberries. I spent the next 24 hours as a ghost in my own childhood home. I was a silent observer, a poltergeist of failed expectations. I mechanically peeled potatoes, my knuckles white on the peeler. I watched my mother bustle around humming to a holiday soundtrack, a terrifying portrait of willful denial. I watched my father laugh at a football game with Leo, the two of them a perfect, unbroken unit. They had simply decided my confrontation last night hadn't happened. They'd erased it. My data point was an anomaly, so they threw it out. Ben called his texts a stream of worried question marks. Are you okay? What's happening, Liv? Talk to me. I turned my phone off. I couldn't connect the real stable world he lived in with this funhouse mirror version of a family I was trapped in. Thursday arrived bright and cold, the house filled with the smell of food and the noise of family. My Aunt Clara and Uncle Ray arrived, my cousins in tow, all of them bundled in scarves and bearing bottles of wine and store-bought pies. They were the audience. The house was full, loud, and warm, and I had never felt so cold or so alone in my life. We gathered around the dining table. The good china, the one I'd been warned never to touch, was laid out. The table was groaning with food I had in essence paid for. My father at the head of the table held up his glass. A toast, he said, his voice booming with patriarchal pride. Before we eat. He cleared his throat and looked around at his domain. Lord, we thank you for this house. We thank you for this food and for this family. And we thank you especially for our son Leo. I froze, my hand halfway to my water glass. A son? My father continued, his eyes glistening as he stared straight at my brother, who isn't afraid to dream. A son who has the courage, the vision to carry this family's name into the future. A true visionary. The room murmured with amens and hears. Leo beamed, his chest puffed with unearned pride. My father didn't look at me once. I wasn't the engineer. I wasn't the provider. I was the empty chair. The meal began. The clatter of silverware, the endless, meaningless chatter. My Uncle Ray, a decent man who worked in insurance, turned to me. So, Olivia, your mom tells me you're building bridges. That's what you do, right? How's that going? I managed a smile that felt like broken glass. It's going well, Uncle Ray. My team just finalized the seismic retrofitting for the new... Oh, it's boring science stuff, my father interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. The entire table's attention snapped to him. She just sits at a computer all day. No real risk. He grinned, taking a swig of wine. But Leo's about to hit it big. Tell them, son. Tell them about the new plan. This was it. The performance. Leo, full of turkey and my father's praise, leaned forward, his eyes bright. He became the visionary. He spun a tale of Smith's Hardware Express, small franchise storefronts. Like Subway, but for hardware, he said, gesturing with a drumstick. The overhead is low, the market is untapped. We just need the seed money to build the brand. He laid out a new plan, a new fantasy, and I could feel the table, my whole extended family, getting drunk on it. I'm talking an initial investment, he said, his voice dropping to a confidential, business-like tone. Maybe 100,000, just to get the first 5 locations off the ground. Then he turned. He locked his eyes on me, a slow, entitled smile spreading across his face. And I know my big sister, he said, raising his glass to me, my #1 fan. I know she's going to help me start. The room went quiet, everyone looking at me, expecting me, the good daughter, the ATM. I slowly, deliberately put my fork down. The tink of the silver against the china was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. No, I said. It wasn't a shout. It was a statement. A fact. No! Leo laughed, a short, sharp bark. What no? What do you mean no? The table was frozen. I mean no. I said, my voice low and clear, the engineer stating the results of a failed test. I know about the $294 or $500 you lost gambling, Leo. The color drained from his face. I know about the $50,000 predatory loan you took out in Dad's name. I know about Provision Logistics. My mother burst into tears. A gasping theatrical sob. Olivia, why are you doing this? She shrieked, her hands flying to her face. You're ruining Thanksgiving. Why am I started, but I was cut off. My father slammed both his palms on the table. The plates jumped. The wine glasses sloshed. His face was a terrifying shade of purple, his eyes bulging. But he wasn't looking at Leo. He was pointing at me. You! He roared, his voice cracking. You ungrateful! You always thought you were better than us, coming in here with your money and your big city job, looking down on us. Mark, calm down, Uncle Ray started. No, my father shouted. We were fine before you started helping. We were fine. You're just jealous. You're jealous of your brother, jealous of this family, of something real. You think your money buys you a seat at this table. It doesn't. He was standing now, leaning over the table, his finger jabbing the air. You are not my daughter. Get out of my house. You are disowned. The word hung in the air. Disowned. It echoed in the sudden, absolute silence. I looked at my mother. She wasn't looking at me. She was comforting Leo, stroking his arm as he stared at his plate, the picture of the wronged victim. I looked at my father, his chest heaving, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated hate. And I looked at my extended family, my aunts and uncles, all of them staring at their food at the ceiling, anywhere but at me. They had just watched me be sacrificed, and they were letting it happen. A strange, icy calm washed over me. The ghost in the machine finally had a purpose. I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood. Okay, I said, my voice perfectly steady. Then I disown you too. I turned and walked out of the dining room. I didn't stop at the closet for my coat. I didn't grab my purse from the kitchen counter. I walked straight to the front door, opened it, and stepped out into the freezing November air. I walked past my car, past the house, and I didn't look back. I just left my entire past burning behind me. I don't know how long I walked. The cold was a physical thing, a solid wall I pushed against. I was wearing a thin sweater useless against the high desert wind that whipped down the empty streets of Eagle Creek. My feet were numb. My lungs burned. I just walked block after block until the adrenaline and the shock finally wore off, leaving behind a strange icy calm. The good daughter had died at that table. The person walking through the dark, freezing streets was someone new, someone liberated. I finally registered the headlights of a car slowing beside me. It was my Honda. I'd left my keys, but I'd forgotten the spare, the one I kept in a magnetic box under the wheel well. An old habit from my high school days. I got in. The engine turned over. I drove through the cold Oregon night, the heater blasting my hands, shaking so hard I could barely hold the wheel. I didn't cry. I just drove. I arrived at Ben's apartment in Portland at 2:17 a.m. I must have looked like a ghost. I used my key, the one he'd given me a year ago, the one that represented a future I had almost destroyed. He was asleep on the couch where I'd left him. He jolted awake at the sound of the door. He saw me coatless, purseless, my face a mask of hollow shock. He was on his feet before his eyes were fully open. Liv. My God. What happened? Are you okay? Where's your... I didn't answer. The icy calm shattered, and the sheer weight of what I had done and what had been done to me hit me all at once. My knees buckled. I collapsed into his arms, a dry, ragged sob tearing out of my chest. They're gone. I whispered the words incomprehensible. He disowned me. It's all gone. Ben held me, just held me for a full minute. He didn't ask questions. He just absorbed the shock. Then his arms tightened. He wasn't just the hurt boyfriend anymore. He was the analyst. He was my partner. He guided me to his home office, sat me in his chair, and wrapped his own jacket around my shoulders. He made me a cup of coffee so strong it was almost sludge. He opened his laptop, turned the screen to face me, and sat on the edge of the desk. His voice was quiet, steady, and full of a cold fury I'd never heard from him before. Show me everything, he said. Show me every account, every password, every dollar. We're going to sterilize the lab. For the next 3 hours, we waged a quiet, methodical war. This wasn't revenge. This was containment. This was an engineer decommissioning a failed toxic project. First, the bank. I logged into my primary account, the one my help flowed from. I blocked all future transfers. I changed every password. I set up alerts for any inquiry, any attempted transaction from any of my family members. My hands, I noted with a strange detachment, were perfectly steady now. Next, the vendors. He's been using your card as a backup for the real suppliers, Ben said, pulling up a feed store's back-end portal I didn't even know existed. The ones he actually pays. I called the 24/7 emergency line for the agricultural supplier. I pictured my father's rage when his feed order wouldn't go through. This is Olivia Smith, I said, my voice crisp. I am removing my credit card effective immediately as the payment guarantee for account number 45B7. Then the phone. I was the primary account holder on the family plan. My parents, Leo, even Aunt Clara. 4 lines all under my name, all paid by me. I logged into the carrier's website. One by one, I transferred the numbers off my account and onto a new pay-as-you-go plan. I paid for 1 more day of service. After that, they were on their own. Finally, the law. Ben made me open a new text document. Write down everything, he said. The dates, the amounts, the shell company, the loan. I typed for 40 minutes a clinical, emotionless summary of my family's fraud. When I was done, I emailed it to my personal lawyer with a subject line, Urgent Family Fraud and Financial Abuse. Need to schedule consultation. It was 4:52 a.m. The first gray light of dawn was bruising the sky. One last thing, Ben said, his face grim. He pulled up the website for the predatory lender, the $50,000 loan, the 38% interest. A bright red payment due notification was flashing on the screen. The first payment is due today, Ben said quietly. If it's missed, the default clause kicks in. The entire amount becomes due. And if they can't pay, they'll seize the diner, then the house. He looked at me, his eyes full of the weight of his next words. It's in your father's name, Liv, not Leo's. If you don't pay this, he loses everything. My hand hovered over the mouse just inches from the Pay Now button. This was it. The last thread. One click. I could be the good daughter one more time. I could save them. I could step back into the trap, prove my loyalty, and buy their resentment for another month. I thought of my father's face contorted with hate. You are disowned. I thought of my mother comforting the son who was actively stealing from her husband. And I thought of my simulation, the one that had flashed cascade failure just 2 days ago. The researcher in me finally knew the truth. You can't save an experiment that is fundamentally contaminated. You can't fix a structure that's rotten to the core. You have to sterilize the lab. I closed the laptop. Ben let out a breath he'd been holding. Liv, let them come, I said. I slept for 3 hours, a dead, dreamless sleep on Ben's couch wrapped in his jacket. I woke up not to an alarm, but to a vibration. My phone, which I'd left on the coffee table, was dancing, buzzing so violently it sounded like an angry hornet. I stared at it, my heart kicking into a painful, high-speed rhythm. It was 9:04 a.m. Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, the day the world ended. The lock screen was a solid wall of notifications. 72 missed calls, 114 text messages, 14 voicemails, all since 7:00 a.m. My family was awake. The barrage was a symphony of chaos, each movement escalating in panic and rage. The first voicemail I played was from my mother, time-stamped 7:02 a.m. Her voice was a hysterical shriek. Olivia, you pick up this phone. There are men here, men in suits at the door. They're talking about the loan. They say they're from the lender. Your father is... You fix this. You call them and you fix this, right now. The second was my father, 7:30 a.m. His voice wasn't hysterical. It was cold. It was the coldest thing I had ever heard. You have made a catastrophic mistake, young lady. I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but our lawyer Bill Henderson will be in touch. He seems to think this constitutes elder financial abuse, not to mention fraud. You've destroyed this family. You have until noon to fix what you broke, or I will see you in court. Then Leo. Not a call, but a string of venomous texts. My phone is off, you witch. What did you do? Mom is crying. They're talking about the diner. They're gonna take the diner. You ruined my life, you effkin' bitch. Amidst the chaos, there was one call, one notification that made my blood freeze. A missed call and a polite professional voicemail from a Sergeant Riley, Eagle Creek Police Department. Good morning, Ms. Smith. We've received a report here filed by your father, Mark Smith, claims of potential fraud and a hacking of his business accounts. If you could give us a call back at your earliest convenience, we just need to get your side of the story. Thank you. Hacking. He'd actually done it. He'd called the police and told them I hacked him. The narrative was being written and I was the villain. The small-town rumor mill would already be churning. I could hear it now. Did you hear that ungrateful daughter of theirs, the engineer? The cold-hearted one from Portland? She cut them off, stole their money, hacked their accounts right before Thanksgiving. The beloved all-American story of Smith's Hardware was being rewritten by my father into a tragedy, and I was the one holding the knife. The old Olivia would have crumbled. The old Olivia would have burst into tears, called her mother back, and transferred the money. The old Olivia would have done anything to stop the screaming, to fix the unfixable, to take the blame. But the old Olivia was dead. She'd been disowned at a dinner table covered in food she'd paid for. I looked at Ben, who was now standing in the doorway, his face grim, holding 2 mugs of coffee. They called the cops, I said, my voice flat. My dad's claiming I hacked him. Of course he is, Ben said, handing me a mug. It's the only move he has left. He's not the victim, he's the accomplice. So what are you going to do? I took a sip. The coffee was scalding, but it grounded me. My agency. My choice. This was the moment. My phone rang again. Sergeant Riley. I looked at Ben. He nodded once, pulled his own phone from his pocket and dialed. "Put the sergeant on speaker," he whispered. "And put this on speaker." A voice answered, "Mathewson Law Group." "Hi, Carol," Ben said. "It's Ben Carter. I need Mr. Mathewson on an urgent call. Yes, I'll hold." A moment later, my lawyer's voice filled the room. "Ben, what's going on? I just got Olivia's email. It's a lot." "It's happening now, Mark," I said, my voice shaking, but gaining strength. "The police in my hometown are calling me. My father filed a report." "Okay." My lawyer's voice was sharp. "Put him on. Let's do this." I answered the call from Sergeant Riley. "Sergeant Riley, this is Olivia Smith." "Ms. Smith, thank you for calling me back." His voice was professional, wary. "As I said, your father is here and he's made some serious allegations." "Sergeant," I interrupted, and my voice was the voice of an engineer presenting an infallible report. "I'm glad you called, and I have my lawyer Mark Mathewson on the line with me. Are you aware, Sergeant, that I am the victim of a $294,500 fraud?" There was a dead silence on the line. "Ma'am, I am the victim of a multi-year wire fraud scheme perpetrated by my brother Leo Smith, which my parents, Mark and Diane Smith, have been enabling and concealing. The hacking my father is referring to was me, the legal and sole owner of my own bank accounts, not paying a 38% interest predatory loan that my brother took out in my father's name. I have every bank record, every wire transfer, every email. And I have the articles of incorporation for the shell company Provision Logistics that my brother used to launder my money to an offshore gambling site." The silence stretched. Ben was staring at me, his eyes wide, a slow smile spreading across his face. My lawyer cleared his throat. "Sergeant Riley, this is Mark Mathewson. We will be fully cooperating with your investigation, and my client, Ms. Smith, will be filing her own report with full documentation this afternoon." "I see," the sergeant said, his professional tone wavering. "Ms. Smith, that's a different story than we were told." I stood up, the coffee mug in my hand. I was terrified. I was shaking. But I was also, for the first time in my life, completely and totally in control. "I know it is, Sergeant, and I'm on my way." I hung up the phone. I looked at Ben. The terror was still there, but beneath it was a foundation of cold, hard steel. "I'm going to Eagle Creek," I said. "But I'm not going to my parents' house. I'm going to the police station, and I'm pressing charges." I walked into the Eagle Creek police station at 11:00 a.m. on the day after Thanksgiving. Ben was on one side of me, and my lawyer Mark Mathewson, who had driven 3 hours at dawn, was on the other. I was carrying a single thick banker's box. It contained 3 years of my life, every bank statement, every wire transfer, the LLC registration for Provision Logistics, the printouts from the gambling site, and the digital signature trace on the 38% predatory loan. Sergeant Riley, a man with a face worn down by small-town drama, ushered us into a back room. My father was somewhere down the hall, still shouting about his rights and family privacy. But as I started laying out the files one by one, a clean, irrefutable timeline of financial siphoning, the sergeant's demeanor changed from pacifying a family squabble to investigating a felony. The bank records were undeniable. The complaint against me, the hacking charge, was laughed out of the room by 4:00 p.m. It was replaced with a new active investigation into wire fraud with Leo Smith as the primary suspect and my parents as persons of interest. The truth in a town as small as Eagle Creek doesn't just spread, it detonates. The narrative didn't just flip, it was rewritten in stone. By Monday, the bank had seized the hardware store. The closed for renovation sign they taped to the door fooled no one. The predatory lender, seeing blood in the water and knowing they wouldn't get a dime from me, immediately put a lien on my parents' house. The cold-hearted daughter story couldn't survive the facts. I wasn't the villain. I was the victim to the tune of nearly $300,000. And the community, the real community, didn't rally around the institution. Sarah, the waitress Leo had stiffed, came forward and gave a statement about Leo's bragging. Other suppliers, the local ones who had been given excuses while I paid for my brother's fantasies, came forward with their own stories of bounced checks and broken promises. The pillar of the community narrative my father had built his entire life on crumbled in less than 72 hours. The diner was auctioned off for pennies on the dollar to a regional chain that painted over the Smith's hardware and feed sign before New Year's. My parents' house went into foreclosure. By spring, they were forced to sell it at a loss just to cover the loan and move into a small, sterile rental apartment on the other side of town. My father, the man who held court, the visionary, got a part-time job at the competing hardware store across the river, wearing a red vest and pushing a broom. My mother's friends, the ones she hosted for coffee and gossip, stopped calling. They were isolated, left with nothing but their pride and the consequences. And Leo was gone. By the time the police had enough to issue a warrant for his arrest, he had fled. His car, the one I had been paying the insurance on, was found abandoned at a bus station in Reno. He was a ghost wanted for questioning a fugitive from the life I had paid for. I went back to Portland. Ben and we started over. We found a new quiet rhythm. I went to therapy. I rebuilt my savings account, this time with a new ironclad password and a new ironclad sense of self. I grieved the family I thought I had, the one I'd been trying to buy. Then 6 months after that Thanksgiving, a letter arrived at my apartment. It was from my mother. My hands shook as I opened it. It wasn't an apology. It was 6 pages of guilt, a long rambling screed about how family is supposed to forgive, how a child's duty is to their parents, and how my father's heart is broken from the humiliation. She blamed me. She blamed my coldness, my money, my big city lawyer. It was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation, a desperate attempt to rewrite the facts one last time. But the end was what stopped my heart. A PS scrawled at the bottom. Leo called. "He's in trouble, Olivia. He just needs $5,000 to get back on his feet. He wants to come home. It's the least you could do to fix what you broke." I read it and I felt nothing. Just the cold, clean click of a lock finally falling into place. 1 year later, 1 year to the day, since I walked out of that house with nothing but the clothes on my back. Ben and I were in our new house, the Craftsman in Roseway, the one with the big yard and the original hardwood floors, the one I bought the down payment for. We were unpacking boxes in the living room, a fire crackling in the hearth, the first real fire I'd ever had. I opened a box labeled Old Files, and there it was, my mother's letter. I'd kept it, a reminder, a final useless data point. I stood in front of the fireplace, the letter in my hand. Ben came up beside me wordlessly and put his arm around my waist. He didn't ask what it was. He knew. I looked at the warped, hateful words, and then I let it go. I dropped the letter into the flames and watched the edges curl, the ink blistering into nothing. My father was right about one thing all those months ago. Paying bills doesn't make you family. For 3 years I tried to buy their love to balance their ledger. But love isn't a transaction. It's not a variable you can control. I thought being disowned was the end of my life. I was wrong. It was the beginning. And with that, Olivia's old ledger was finally closed. Her story shows how hard it is to break from a toxic past, but how necessary it is for a new beginning. What part of Olivia's journey resonated most with you? We'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. If you appreciate complex stories, consider subscribing. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Ashes of Yesterday. We'll see you next time.